If you wanted to put out a thesis about our education system after COVID, you would have a very hard time not being able to defend something as in our kids don't seem as smart as they have been based on what happened during COVID times. It was a advancement of technology and just a loss of social networking of children that allowed for a lot of issues in coming up. And we're seeing some very, very drastic ideas of what's happening there. So in many cases, many people, including the Trump administration, wants to fix our education system by putting it down to the states to deal with it they want to. Actually, it's the best just way to be cheap and trying to make things work, but that's a whole other thing. However, here in Arkansas, an issue where a former Trump worker, being Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is our governor and has essentially some sort of machinations of maybe going to the big house herself, has done some real work on the state's education system. It's one of a couple states that have already done something fairly drastic to this, something called the LEARNS Act. Now, something we're finding from the LEARNS Act, which has now had a full year to kind of, adjust the size, mask the size, marinate, whatever you want to say, is that because of that, in Little Rock specifically, there's a report out in the Democrat Gazette, our main state paper, where Little Rock schools are expecting some third graders to repeat the grade because of the LEARNS Act permissions. Although there will be some retention requirement tests that will take effect, and of course, there will be some passes, some people that can get permissions to keep going forward. We'll get to that in a moment. Start with the basic part of the actual story, where the Little Rock School District expected about 1 in every 28 third graders to be retained under the state's Arkansas LEARNS Act. They are not meeting the required reading proficiency standard. So according to the Democrat Gazette and some district officials, we're getting these numbers. That's approximately 3.6 of a third graders that are going to repeat the grade unless they qualify for one of the law's exemptions. There are exemptions. There will be plenty of them, but the qualifications are where things get a little squirrely. Let's talk about why this matters at this particular part of age. The Arkansas LEARNS Act requires students to demonstrate proficiency in reading before advancing to the fourth grade. Education experts often describe the third grade as a pivotal year because this is where students transition from learning to read, the basics, to reading to learn, where they actually get more things out of what they're reading. Beginning in the fourth grade, nearly every subject we have here for Arkansas, including science, social studies, and mathematics, will require stronger reading comprehension skills. Henceforth, this is the cutoff time to get them ready to go. The policy aims to ensure students have the literacy foundations needed for future academic success. Now, the issue we have is school officials emphasize that retention is intended to be the last resort. Holding them back is supposed to be your very last straw before they can actually move on in both their time to the fourth grade and in their mental capacity, their reading capacity. But students identified as struggling readers receive interventions throughout the school year, we're told, including targeted reading instruction, tutoring, and opportunities to improve before the final promotion decisions are made. So by the time they get to the end of the year or beginning of the next year, these things should have been figured out already. The law also includes certain exemptions from students who meet specific criteria already. So if they have issues learning English, they're learning it right now, or they have qualifying disabilities, they will be passed on regardless, although in most cases they hope they're close to proficient. If not proficient in general, they just have these skills or have these disabilities to use for a reason just in case something happens. Now, there's supporters and there's critics. And like we have the conversation project, we'll get to pros and cons in a minute. But the supporters of the retention policy are arguing that promoting students who cannot read and don't have the proficiency to actually comprehend will only compound learning difficulties in later grades. Essentially, you're setting them up to fail in the fourth, fifth, sixth, and beyond. They point to research suggesting that literacy that is early taken on and intervention to keep someone to learn and read early can improve long-term education outcomes going into the future. But let's not get to the future. Let's talk about the right now first, where the critics are. They're arguing that repeating a grade may negatively affect a child's confidence anyway, their social development, and long-term academic engagement, just for holding them back. Some educators contend that retention alone does not address the underlying causes of reading and the struggles that their schools have, and schools would actually invest more heavily in early intervention and individuals instruction, which is sort of a topsy-turvy, yin-yang kind of crazy way of saying the schools are saying they're doing it, but the critics are saying they're not doing it. So where's the proof? That's a interesting concept. There is no proof. But we do have a number, may not be as large as the headline wants to scare you into, but a number of students who aren't going to be pushed on because of their reading skills specifically, not because the overall skills going on. They may have passed the grade, but their reading proficiency does not pass that score. Arkansas is one of several states who have adopted the third grade reading law designed to improve literacy outcomes. The third grade part is just a larger part of the LEARNS Act, which also requires older kids to have community service, i.e. go out and work for free for a certain amount of hours before they can move on to those levels as well. It's really large and expansive and just kind of crazy. Check it out sometime when you want to see, maybe get your blood boiling on how education is working in other states or in this state if you haven't figured it out yet. With similar policies on the third grade part specifically existing across the country as educators are responding to declining reading scores following, as I said earlier, COVID-19 pandemic and broader concerns about elementary literacy. Essentially, what happened during COVID was a big deal. And because of that, we are now dealing with the repercussions of people who have graduated and are now matriculating out of graduation who are lacking some skills that they probably would have gotten if we didn't have the world shutting down. Now we're trying to fix that and fix some of the things we got into, which you could say are bad habits because of the way learning has changed. And in addition to tablets, we had a story, a quick story in when I was recording. I'm recording this on Monday the 13th. We had a story in the news of the AM on the shorts about a study saying that all the money put into tablets and laptops to improve kids in reading and access to their books now has students who have worse levels of able to comprehend things and hold on to ideas than they did a generation ago. So thank you, technology. In the same sense, states are continuing to debate the balance between accountability measures and intervention-focused approaches because everything now is focused on the technology angle. And if we're adding more technology, it's only going to make things, oddly enough, worse. The pros and cons of this policy for the third grade, not of course of the LEARNS Act because it's terrible, but specifically whether they can hold back third graders who are not proficient in reading. The pros for this, why should we do this? It reinforces importance of reading proficiency in early education. It puts a real foot stomp on this is important to take care of right now. Actually may prevent students from falling further behind in later grades because they take a year to catch up, and encourages schools to identify and support struggling readers earlier if they do it properly. If they see this early on and aren't just passing people along and hoping they can hit that test score, then you will see that you have a chance to teach the kids who are having issues and get them some help early on. However, grade retention can affect students' confidence and social development skills. If you held back in the third grade, people tend to remember that as you go further along. Critics argue that retention alone may not improve their literacy outcomes. Just redoing the classes doesn't mean they're going to get better. They may have some other issues that go along with it. And parents and educators are disagreeing on whether repeating a grade is in a child's best interest in general. Because if they are mature enough, which is saying a lot for third graders, and they have passed enough other classes to keep up with everything else, the biggest issue is they are slow readers. Is that going to really help them out in the long run? Now, the relatively low projected retention rate is one good part of this. One student out of every 28 is not terrible. It's not great, but it could be much worse. It suggests that most Little Rock students are actually meeting the mid-literacy benchmark, or maybe the benchmark is pretty low, and that's what the issue is. But even if that's the case, the policy is underscoring Arkansas's emphasis on early reading proficiency as a cornerstone of long-term academic achievement. So think about this for your household, for what you have going on. If you were dealing this with your kids, your nieces and nephews, if you don't have any kids, how would you feel if they got held back in their reading? It's because of their reading. Or are they brilliant kids who don't have issues with it, and they would see other kids who would be held back or move into a level someplace where kids are held back and have to deal with that one? It's an interesting sort of point where it's either kids who are held back have to deal with the sort of stigma of that, or you deal with seeing someone being held back finally catching up to you, or you catching up to them, going past them and dealing with them. And of course, parents have to live with this. Schools have lived with this. We all have to live with this. Is this a fix? Knowing that third grade is a critical mark to know you should be ready for reading, and just saying, okay, you're not ready, do the whole third grade again. Is that going to fix things? You let us know your opinions on this one.